All right, good evening. The September 21st Board of Education meeting is now in session. Please rise for the invocation. O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance, stir us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. The pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 2.03 is approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? All those in favor? The minutes are approved. Item 2.04 is establish agenda order, and the agenda stands as published. Item 2.05 is recognitions, and we have Mr. Truffer doing a presentation.
Good evening, Mrs. Korbalak, Mrs. Hummer, Dr. Arlotto, members of the board. I am Regional Assistant Superintendent Chris Truffer, and I have the distinct pleasure of introducing this evening's board recognition. But before I begin, I would like to ask members of the board and Dr. Arlotto to please come forward. While I am now working with schools in the South River and Arundel clusters, I had the privilege for many years to work with schools in the Annapolis and Broadneck clusters and had the distinct pleasure of working with Bates Middle School for 11 years. I can tell you emphatically that for any school to be successful, its staff must feel like members of a family. From late August to June each year, staff members not only work alongside each other, but support and uplift each other in innumerable ways. Their efforts go far beyond the classroom and uplift each other not just in the pursuit of academic excellence for students, but in the relationship building that extends well beyond the school walls. When times are tough, and there are tough times, our school staff members know they can rely on each other. Nowhere was that better exemplified than on a day late last school year at Bates Middle School, when social studies teacher Pete Bielski suffered a life-threatening medical emergency. Fortunately, Mr. Bielski's school family was not only there, but leapt into action to provide aid that likely saved his life. Behavioral specialist Lassie Belt was first on the scene and began CPR, with assistant principal Mike Ballard close behind to help. Language Arts Department Chair Mike McCann retrieved a defibrillator, with science teacher Dawn Caton and school nurse Sue Danielson providing critical care until paramedics arrived. Stacy Canuel, a Bates parent volunteer who is also a registered nurse, assisted Ms. Danielson in this work. All of this occurred, I might add, with 500 additional people in the building due to an end-of-year 8th grade ceremony. Principal Paul DeRue, to his credit, directed a school-wide lockdown so that nothing interrupted the first aid efforts, and 6th grade team leader Taylor Grimail monitored the hallway where the emergency occurred. Their collective efforts, along with those of others that day, allowed Mr. Bielski to receive the care he needed. I am thrilled to tell you that when classes resumed this past August 22nd, Mr. Bielski was right where he belonged, in his classroom, teaching his students. He is also with us tonight, and before we ask those I've named to come forward, I'd like to invite Mr. Pielski forward to say a few words. Pete?
It was a remarkable bit of teamwork that saved me. It was quite a narrative he put together there, but the amazing part was afterward, when I came back to school, and a little exchange between Mr. Belt and myself really exemplified what happened. Mr. Belt is known for his stern handshake and his way to teach kids how to have a nice, firm and assertive type of greeting. Well, when he saw me, he came at me with his customary handshake, and we've shaken hands probably 100 times over 2 years. But this time, a handshake wasn't enough. He needed a hug, and he gave me a hug, and it was kind of a confirmation that, wow, you're really here, and it's great to have you, and I saved your life. And it's true, he saved my life along with the others, but there was very symbolic of it, and there's a connection between us now that can never be broken. And you know, he often tells me the story. I said, "How bad was it?" He goes, "Nah, it was bad. You looked gray." And it same goes with Don and the others that were there to save me, and I'm really grateful, and I'm lucky, and I'm fortunate, and each day I do say I have some blessings, but the connection between Mr. Belt and myself and the others there is inseparable at this point, and I'm thankful for their emergency, their calm under pressure, their teamwork, and of course their willingness to not give up even when it looked pretty bad. Thank you.
Just stay here. Thanks, Pete. It's an understatement to say that we are glad to have you here with us, along with the other members of the Bates family. As the members of the Bates family who were so helpful to Pete come forward, please join me in thanking them for their more than heroic acts. Way to go, Bates team.
Or if you can move down this way. You can hold open the...
Standing up?
Yes.
I'm going to move here with just say Chris.
You were going to tweet something, weren't you?
Sure, I can see you back from here I can. Everyone making a big smile. I'll take one more. Big smile. That's great, thank you.
Item 2.06 is school and community highlights. I have nobody highlighting anything. No highlights. I do want to mention that on Saturday I had the opportunity to join the other judges in judging the Maryland Teacher of the Year. And there were 7 finalists, including our own Katrina Griffith. And we'll find out the big reveal on October 7th, but they were all just amazing, fantastic teachers. So no matter who wins, it's going to be an awesome night. That's all I have. All right, item 2.07 is the CRASC report.
Good evening, President Korbelak, Dr. Arlotto, and board members. My name is Josie Urea. I am a sophomore at Severna Park High School and a member of the Chesapeake Regional Association of Student Councils. It feels like CRASC has been extremely busy this year since school has started, and our organization meets every Wednesday when there is not a conflicting board meeting. Our meetings are located here at the Carol Parham building at 6:30 and usually wrap around 8:30. We've been lucky this year as new students have joined in our conversations and brought new topics up for discussion. These weekly meetings are open to all secondary students, not just officers. Many students attend as school liaisons or students at large. We are choosing to clarify this in our report because we have been approached by so many students over the last few weeks who would like to become involved. We want everyone to have access to the student leadership programs because we are a stronger organization when more students are involved and vocal. Information and reminders are available on our website and social media feeds. Students wishing to bring an issue to our attention can contact us and we will add their item to our agenda. Historically, CRASC has been linked with SGA, but since we deal with issues that appeal to a broader audience of students, we look beyond student government to find our next leaders. Students do not need to be involved in SGA or any other school organization to be a part of our work. We are always actively recruiting new students, especially younger kids, who can be a part of the organization for a longer period of time. Another way that students can be involved in the AACPS Student Leadership Program is to participate in the Superintendent's Teen Advisory. This is Dr. Arlotto's Student Advisory Panel that meets once a month. There are representatives from all high schools. For nomination, please see your principals. This year, I will be the liaison between CRASC and the Teen Advisory to make sure that important student issues are discussed by more than one audience. Dr. Arlotto, I'm looking forward to that first meeting in October. In closing, I would like to revisit an issue that CRASC tackled in our General Assembly last December. The students of Anne Arundel County have been discussing school start times since 2010. We have been asked to give statements, write position letters, engage in conversations, and sit on the school start times committee. Officially, CRASC supports a vote to make no changes to this current school start time and schedule. With all of the money, resources, and time that it would require to make a meaningful change, we do not believe that the best option has been found. If and when an option is presented that our community can support and afford, we will reevaluate our stance. For updates, please information, or to ask questions, check out our website at crasconline.blogspot.com. Thank you for the community for the opportunity to speak on the behalf of the students of Anne Arundel County.
Thank you. Next, we'll have the public comment portion of the meeting. Anyone wishing to speak on an item not on today's agenda may offer testimony during the public comment portion of the meeting. Speakers will be allotted 3 minutes each, and the board asks that comments remain civil and appropriate for the various audiences that may be watching or viewing the meeting. Student-specific and personnel matters are confidential and cannot be discussed in this forum. This time is intended for speakers to voice their opinion and not necessarily as a question and answer period. Speakers may pose questions, but answers will be counted toward the 3-minute allotment. For the record, please give your name before speaking, and handouts should be given to the board assistant. I have 5 cards: Robert Silkworth, Sebastian Serrano, Lisa Rodvian, Odessa Ellis, and Lisa Van Buskirk.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, President Korbelak, Vice President Hummer, Dr. Arlotto, and distinguished board members. My name is Robert Silkworth, and I'm one of your veteran teachers here in Anne Arundel County. I am also, once again, the chairperson of the High School Concerns Committee. and we will come to you almost every month to give you an update. Our first meeting was held on September the 14th, and I can report to you that there have been many reports of a very positive nature for the new school year. As you know, the TAC ASI committee is also up and running again this year, and we will continue to collaborate with them in order to discuss concerns and recommendations for our students in the school system at the high school level. As you know, I usually focus on a few items. A recent poll of many of our high schools at the meeting indicated that our faculty councils in high schools are up in operation, and all reports also were very positive. We view the faculty council as one of the most important means by which collaboration can occur for the good of our students, teachers, and staff. And with the help of many people, it appears as if faculty councils are operating as they should. Also, there were some concerns raised about the new grading regulations, and those concerns will be shared with the TAC ASI committee. We're always concerned about consistent implementation of grading regulations, and some concerns were raised about some interpretation of some of the regulations, which will require some clarification from Dr. McMahon and her staff. There was discussion also about the calendar for the next school year as a result of the proclamation. I know you are all working on that. It might be a good idea to reach out to teachers in a form of a survey or whatever in order to get some recommendations from them. I usually end with some kudos, and I really have two. One is also for Katrina Griffin, who on October 7th we will be going to the dinner with some of you, and they're all great folks, and you're right, whoever wins, it's great. The other is I'd like to reach out to everyone in the school system, from Dr. Alata, Board of Ed, all the way down, because it appears as if this opening has been extremely good, and we're off to a great start. Thank you. Our next meeting is on October 19th, not October 12th, because October 12th does fall on a holiday, and you're all invited. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I am Sebastian Serrano, and my job is to teach AP Physics and ESOL Matter and Energy at Annapolis High School. As an American, I look for two things in a job: an occupation where I believe I can truly excel, and one in which I can make a reasonable living. My inspirations are the true leaders of our past. I hold similar convictions toward teaching as General Douglas MacArthur did toward the service when he stood before the graduates of West Point and said, "Duty, honor, country. Those three hallowed words reverently dictate what you ought to be, what you can be, and what you will be." The five-star general understood from experience that true success came from an unyielding desire to succeed, a thorough and efficient work ethic, and a genuine support from his fellow Americans. When I go to work, I have the following contractual-based objectives on my mind: prepare Physics 1 for the AP exam on May 2nd, prepare Physics 2 for the AP exam on May 3rd, prepare Physics C for both AP exams on May 8th, and prepare ESOL for next year when they will take a state-mandated exam. I also have more authentic teacher-based objectives in mind. Foster innovative critical thinking skills to evaluate how the world works, develop scientific literacy and argumentations that the students can create a multidimensional approach toward problem solving, and encourage a sense of purpose in the scientific community so that all realize they belong and can contribute. When I leave the work site for the day, I reflect, how did today contribute to those noble objectives? Unfortunately, additional matters of significance occupy my time. What if my car engine fails for the third time in the past 12 months? How will I tell my students that I have to resign without them thinking I've turned my back on them? What if officials attempt to remove language regarding step increases from our contract yet again? What if they finally succeed this year? Is the $20 million healthcare shortfall a failure to pay or another tactic to freeze steps? Will I be able to remain an Anne Arundel County taxpayer, or will I be part of the very real teacher exodus so that my taxes go to a county that is able to fund me as I need? Can I look leadership in the eye and truly believe that I can fulfill General MacArthur's call for duty, honor, and country? My state leadership applied a blanket to my profession, called me a thug. My county leadership said that they didn't know how the budget timeline worked. This body last year ratified a contract that took away challenge stipend and retention bonuses. If I'm simply a thorn in your side, our kids have truly lost. Their names become meaningless when they are but pawns in a political chess match. I will continue to follow through and ensure on my end that my students are the ones being accepted into engineering, medical, teaching, law, and business programs. I continue to live in accordance to duty, honor, and country. Yet in addition to some of these officials that have not appeared to be on my side, I now realize that time is not either.
Good evening, Board of Education. For the record, Lisa Van Buskirk of Edgewater. As part of my role of Start School Later chapter leader, and more about that later, in addition to emailing all of you frequently, I occasionally ask for meetings so that I can better understand the board's concerns about shifting school hours. As part of that outreach effort, this summer I emailed Ms. Williams and Mr. Grannon several times to welcome the board and ask them to meet. Mr. Grannon never replied, which is fine. I'm used to silence from most of my emails. But more concerning was a response on behalf of Ms. Williams from an AACPS staffer, and that email has been provided to you. Most concerning was a certain paragraph, the third one, which said, I want to let you also know that it's not the practice for individual board members to meet with specific stakeholders, as personal meetings have the potential of putting a board member at an advantage of gaining new information that other board members may not have. Since the board functions as a unit and not individually, they do their best, all to be on the same playing field. So I ask, has the board recently adopted a policy of which the public is not aware, or is your executive assistant mistaken? If the board has adopted such a policy, does it apply to meetings between board members and Dr. Arlotto, so that no individual board member has an advantage not offered to all board members? Why would the AACPS staff member advise Ms. Williams that she does not need to meet with the public? Why would the AACPS staff imply that the board does not want all the information on a subject that would inform the discussion, no matter how it is provided to the board? Will Ms. Williams similarly be refraining from participating in all class activities and discussing issues with other students, as that could put her at an advantage of gaining new information that other board members may not have? I certainly hope not, because the point of having a student member on this board is that she brings a unique perspective that not all the other adult members have. So I sincerely hope that you welcome meetings and interactions with students, parents, taxpayers, and other stakeholders, knowing that such meetings can be vitally important to gaining an understanding of the concerns and viewpoints of those you serve. And I hope your assistance response is not an attempt to limit the public's access to the board, including the student member, who holds the unique position in our state and country as having full voting rights. Thank you.
Good evening, President Korbelak and members of the board. My name is Lisa Rodvian, and I'm a secondary teacher in Anne Arundel County Public Schools. I'd like to start by saying thank you for the role that you played in ensuring that teachers received their promised step increases for this year. This will provide some needed financial relief for many of my colleagues, and it will also help boost teacher morale, which has been very low in recent years. As you look to the new budget year, I hope you will push for a budget that remedies some of the lingering inequities from steps lost during the recession. Let me explain. New teachers hired in our county are placed on the salary scale only 2 steps below their actual years of experience. While obviously this benefits recruiting efforts, it is crushing the morale of the teachers who stuck with AACPS through the recession. A teacher with an identical education and experience to mine, for example, is being hired at a salary 10% higher than my current salary. This is pretty typical across the salary scales. Needless to say, this is causing current teachers in the county to feel resentful, and in some cases, teachers are considering leaving the county altogether. In fact, I've heard of teachers leaving and returning in order to make up some of their lost steps, spending another year in a year in another county and then coming back. To make matters worse, the teachers who have been here often work hard to help our fellow new colleagues orient to all the policies and practices unique to AACPS. In my hallway of 7 teachers, there are 5 new teachers. I have already spent a fair amount of time this year teaching my colleagues how to use our grading system, attendance system, teaching them about our discipline policies, and other things teachers new to our county need to know. Out of respect and fairness to teachers who have stuck with AACPS through the rough years, I hope the board will push for a budget that works to remedy these substantial inequities between longtime teachers and new hires. Thank you.
Hi. Good evening. I'm Odessa Ellis, Chairperson of Concerned Citizens for Successful Students. It's good to see you again, and I'm happy to know that you all had a safe summer. Some of us didn't. There were 9 killings this year and numerous shootings in some of the Annapolis communities, most of them in public housing and low-income areas. I would like to share something personal about me. The early years of my life, I lived at 101 Calvert Street, also known as the 4th Ward. Today, the state and county government buildings are located there. We were low to moderate income families, but the families were strong then, and education was important. The Fourth Ward consisted of black-owned businesses, community organizations, and black professionals. We even had our own movie theater. As a child, I don't ever recall seeing a police officer in the community. Our churches and segregated schools were an important mainstay of our lives. In the 1950s, urban renewal or urban removal came and removed a major piece of the Fourth Ward. We lost that community of togetherness. Eventually, everything was all gone. All the businesses, the black professionals. New neighborhoods sprang up, such as Robinwood, Newtown 19 and 20, Annapolis Gardens, and others. Then came the drugs into those neighborhoods first, and then later the guns. Now our neighborhoods are infested with crime, and they are in a crisis situation. The children are stressed, and the parents are stressed, and I'm also stressed. There has been a breakdown of the black families. In the neighborhood that I grew up in, most of the families had a mother and a father at home. Today, circumstances facing our children are unbelievable. During this past year and summer, our community ambassadors attended funerals of a lot of our young people. Their ages range from 15 to 30. Many of these young people I remember also from Annapolis High School. Our community ambassadors, there are only 4 now, are a comforting source for these families who are living in these crime-ridden neighborhoods. And the sad thing about this is that the majority of the families living there are good, hardworking people who are just trying to survive and raise a family. Many are just stuck there. The community ambassador services are invaluable. So I am asking the board, once more, that you would increase their pay from $10 to $15 per hour in this upcoming school budget, and for them to also to receive benefits, because they do not receive any pay when the schools are closed or the kids are out of school during the summer breaks. Thank you.
Thank you all. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak during public participation? Okay, we will move on to the public hearing for the superintendent's recommended FY 2018 CIP and capital budget. This is a public hearing, and those individuals wishing to testify have signed the sheet that I have before me. 3 minutes will be allotted to each speaker, and if you're here with a group wanting to speak on the same subject, I ask that you appoint a spokesperson to deliver the testimony, and other members of the group are welcome to stand while that testimony is given. The light in front of me will flash yellow when you have 30 seconds remaining, and a tone will be heard when your time is up. For the record, please give your name and the spelling of your name and the group you represent, if any. Copies of comments are welcome and may be given to the board assistant. Please come up front and have a seat at the witness tables when you're called, and you may speak from the podium or from the tables, whichever you find more comfortable. This hearing is designed so the board can obtain public input on the budget recommendation as opposed to a back and forth discussion. Board members will take what they hear tonight as well as other input received prior to this hearing and formulate their thoughts and questions about the budget, which will come up for adoption later this meeting. I have 4 names: Kristen Etzel, Howard Rolicky, Laura Blankenship, and Mallory LaFawn.
Good evening, Dr. Arlotto, President Korbelak, and members of the board. My name is Kristen Etzel. I'm the parent of 2 children who attend Rippling Woods Elementary School, and I'm the organizer of the Fund Old Mill School Construction Group. Tonight we have a group of parents, PTA members, and others representing many of the schools included in the Old Mill Complex Master Plan, released earlier this month. The board's projected 6-year plan presented last year included kicking off the Old Mill Complex Master Plan work in fiscal year 18, with design funding for Quarterfield Elementary, Rippling Woods Elementary, and Old Mill West High School. We are here tonight to ask that you return to last year's projected schedule and restore funding to the fiscal year 18 budget for the 3 schools mentioned. If the funding is not restored to the fiscal 18 budget for any of the Old Mill Complex schools, that would mean at least another year before kickoff for the entire project would begin. We would also ask that the board study all options for any possibility of accelerating the 9-year overall schedule for the project, as was detailed in the master plan. Old Mill schools have had funding promised and then delayed in previous years due to the recession and other factors. We've waited for many years, and we have our place in line according to the 2015 MGT study priority list. Last year, the county included funding in their fiscal year 17 budget for land acquisition for this project. You now also have a detailed master plan document to use as a guide to move forward. Why the delay in beginning the design phase for the first schools in the complex? Our goal is to see the funding for these projects stay on course so that the design work can begin as soon as possible. We don't want to see the funding for this project delayed again. We would like to see the Old Mill Complex Master Plan design and construction funding restored into the fiscal year 18 budget, as well as see the corresponding funding in the projected 6-year plan to shift up accordingly. Thank you.
Good evening, Board. I just kind of want to reiterate the same thing. I'm sorry. Howard Rollicky out of Millersville. I have a son that goes to Rippling Woods, so I've been involved with the school a little bit. And you can walk around the school and see. I can't speak for the other schools, but I've been in and out of Rippling Woods a bunch of times over the last 3 years. And the open air classrooms, it makes it tough. I've gone up there just to read to the kids, and it's distracting. And my son gets distracted, so I'm sure the others do as well. And like we were talking about before, it's not about bumping any other schools out of the way or anything. We're just trying to stay on course. It's on the budget. We don't know why it got bumped off last year. We're just hoping, coming here today and speaking to you, making this plea that we just stay on budget, just keep it on the boards, on the books this year. That's our main goal. So we're just trying to represent the school, all the schools really. I know the plan won't really affect my son, but I do have a daughter that's 2. So, this hits home for me. So that's all I'd like to say.
Good evening. My name is Laura Blankenship. I'm a parent and a grandparent from Rippling Woods Elementary School. I have experienced the school at its lowest when it had 400 children going to that school. Now it has about 700 and some odd children going there. The school is overcrowded. We have new communities being built every day in the area. You see a new housing unit popping up here, down here, but there's no reconstruction to the schools. There's nothing being added. There's nothing being taken. And our kids need the best that they can have, but with the overcrowding, you can't give them the best that they deserve. When you walk through the halls, this class could be over here learning math, but this class over here is trying to learn reading. I didn't hear them reading math. It's just too confusing for the kids to be functioning. And when you're doing gym, okay, you hear the kids down the hall in the gym, even though the door is shut, you're in the library, you still hear kids in the gym. Hey, yeah, we're playing basketball, da da da. But it's frustrating for the kids because I'm there a lot. I volunteer there a lot when I'm not working. And you see the kids struggling every day just to do reading because this kid over here and this classroom being disruptive, or this kid just needs a little bit more time, and the teachers are getting frustrated as well as the kids. So please put us back on the reconstruction budget, please.
Good evening, Superintendent Arlotto, President Corblack, Vice President Hummer. My name is Mallory LaFawn, and I'm a parent of a 3rd grader and kindergartner at Brockbridge Elementary School. I'm also the current president of the PTA. First, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak on the building improvements at Brockbridge Elementary. The school community is both happy and excited about the possibility of walls in the classroom, which may help decrease distraction and increase student productivity. In addition to the walls, the school is in need of additional repair. I know the budget is tight, but our school has not had a major renovation in years. I'm asking the board consider adding money to improve the existing restrooms in the school. The restrooms are extremely outdated, and while our custodial staff does a fantastic job maintaining the restrooms, the toilets, fixtures, tiles, and even doors could use replacing. One example are the outdated sinks, making it almost impossible to wash both hands at the same time, increasing the transfer of germs on students' hands. This, in addition to the missing tiles, broken toilets, outdated fixtures, are a needed improvement to the building. Not only are the bathrooms outdated and in desperate need of repair, the school population is growing. Right now, there are around 540 students enrolled at Brockbridge, about 100 more than there were this time last year. This increase in enrollment, particularly primary students, is placing an additional strain on already unpleasant restroom conditions. By providing money now for repairs now, this will no doubt save money in the future. I also have some pictures. Do I just pass them over? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak on the capital budget? All right, we will move to action items. Item 5.01 is administrative personnel appointments. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the personnel listed on the attached sheets be promoted and/or appointed.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion passes 900. Item 5.02 is the ratification of the negotiated agreement between the Board of Education and the Teachers Association of Anne Arundel County. And we have a presentation, a brief presentation. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation, I guess? I forgot to ask you for your recommendation.
Oh, should I give that to you? Absolutely. I recommend approval of the tentative agreement between the Board of Education and the Teachers Association of Anne Arundel County.
All right, now we have a presentation.
Yes. Good evening, Mrs. Korbelak, Ms. Hummer, Dr. Arlotto, and members of the board. For the record, my name is Melissa Rawls, and I am the Director of Employee Relations. I am pleased to announce that the negotiating teams for the Board of Education and the Teachers Association of Anne Arundel County have reached a tentative agreement for FY 2017. In brief, the summary of changes as agreed upon by both parties include the following. All eligible Unit 1 employees will receive a one-step increase for fiscal year 2017, effective on their second pay period in accordance with the FY 2017 payroll cycles. In addition, all Unit 1 employees located on Step 25 on June 30th, 2016, and remaining active on Step 25 at the date of board ratification will receive a one-time payment of $926.31. I would like to take a moment to thank Bill Jones, the Executive Director of TAC, and Richard Binford, TAC President, and the negotiating teams for their dedicated efforts during FY 2017 negotiations. Ultimately, the teams were able to reach an agreement which supports TAC members and their commitment to AACPS students, staff, and community. On September 7, 2016, TAC ratified this agreement. As such, I am respectfully requesting your approval and ratification of the noted summary of changes. Thank you.
Are there any board questions or comments? Is there any public comment?
Yes.
You have public comment, Richard?
Oh, I do. May I?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Well, good evening, Dr. Arlotto, President Korbelak, Vice President Hummer, and board members. I am Richard Benford, President of the Teachers Association of Anne Arundel County. I want to thank Dr. Arlotto, the board, and Ms. Rawls for all their efforts to collaborate during this extended bargaining season. We understand the budget constraints and lack of adequate funding have played a large role in the deep hole in which we still find ourselves. The past 8 years have been difficult at best when stretching the dollars that are allotted to Anne Arundel County schools in terms of programs and human resources. At the same time, educators have made many sacrifices in order to keep the operation going. Educators across the county have maintained a high standard of delivery of instruction for our students throughout this turbulent time, with the notion that economy is improving and enhancements will be made. We spent over 10 months working through the bargaining process once again this year. We've had a successful ratification for this contract on September 7th, following the second consecutive year of mandatory mediation. Moving forward, there is still much work to do to ensure that we are not in that same position again next year. Anne Arundel County educators have lost 5.5 years of experience steps on average in the salary scale. Having lost so many steps in pay, our educators are finding greener pastures elsewhere, While understanding the need to recruit candidates to fill positions, we need to respect the work for those who have remained loyal to the system. Our educators have been feeling the workload rise each year. Not having proper enhancements makes their efforts seem less respected. Baltimore County reached a settlement agreement providing a 3-year term with step increase each year and a 2% COLA each year. Baltimore County has been the only urban local that pays less than Anne Arundel. Their new 3-year contract will leave Anne Arundel as the lowest paid urban local in Maryland. This ensures that Anne Arundel County Public Schools will and have been characterized as the training ground for other places, and we'd like to see that become not the case. We can't go another year without restoring lost steps at some level. The bargaining teams work tirelessly to restructure the scale and make it more affordable for the county. We are prepared to work collaboratively with the board's team to figure out a way to make it happen. There has been a groundswell of activists ready to organize and take back our county. TAC has engaged these folks on a grassroots level through our Raise Anne Arundel campaign. Raise Anne Arundel looks at raise student achievement, raise awareness in the community of the need for more resources for educators in our county, and to raise the level of understanding of how a desirable school system is a win for the local economy. We had to take steps to ensure that we are climbing out of the hole and not slipping back into it. So I'm confident that we can do this through mutual collaboration on many topics we both have an interest. We will undoubtedly disagree on points along the way, but we are allies in the quest to provide great public schools for every child, and I am looking forward to traveling down that road together. It is not lost on the Teachers Association that this contract is a work of collaboration. I am hopeful that this board will vote in favor of the contract between the board and TAC. It is the right thing to do at this point in time, and I urge you to vote yes for ratification. Thank you.
Bill, you have one?
I do, thank you. I will speak probably for less amount of time than my friend and employer Richard Benford did. But I do have a couple comments to make. I think Ms. Rawls shortchanged herself and her own team when she congratulated TAC and TAC's team. Yeah. It took a lot of perseverance and a lot of conscientious effort to get through 10 months worth of negotiations and then 20 hours of mediation stuffed in a 2-day period. A lot of effort on both teams, and unlike a lot of different negotiations in other areas and in other industries, every member of the team on both teams contributed. And but scarce resources make voluntary agreements tough to come by, and resources are scarce yet again this year, as they were the last few years, as they were since 2009. I'm going to ask for your support of this contract, but there's something I want to bring to your attention as well, and that's a little bit of the history. Between the years of 2005 and 2009, we started that 4-year period almost where we are now. Not as well paid as the other urban counties, not as well paid as Calvert, well, not an urban, one of the counties that touch our borders. And we want a 4-year effort. We reduced the number of steps in the salary scale from 34 to 23, so there are less years to get from entry level to top step. We eliminated some of the 5-year weights that were in the salary scale, and in each of 3 years we reduced the longevity weights by 1 year, which is what helped us compress the salary scale. At the end of that 3-year period, we were among the best paid districts in the state of Maryland. We didn't match Montgomery County, but they're kind of the state's flagship when it comes to salary and benefits for public employees. But we were on par with Prince George's, we were on par with Calvert, we were even on par with Howard. In fact, while Howard's salary scale ended a little higher than ours did, over a 30-year projected career, we had a higher lifetime earnings. And that was when fiscal year 2010 arrived, with furloughs, with no steps, with no raise. 2011, a temporary 1% was the board's last and best offer. We went to impasse for the first time in a few years and made that a 1.25 permanent raise, but with no step increase. And it's been a struggle every year since. All that ground we gained between 2005 and 2009, we lost. And as you heard Richard say, that for the last several years, Baltimore County Public Schools has been the only district keeping us off the bottom pay rung of the urban districts. Well, now we are on the verge of being overtaken by Baltimore County, and within the next 2 years, we will probably be, if we are not already, the lowest paid urban district in the state of Maryland. If we're going to recruit and retain highly qualified teachers, that cannot continue. Again, I ask for your support of this contract.
I'd like to thank all of you for all of your hard work and working together, or we wouldn't be here tonight.
You find when you're at a negotiating table, you get to know each other pretty well. Sometimes more well than you would like to. And we experienced some of that, but we have a pretty good working relationship, not only between your chief negotiator and ours, but I mean between the teams in general.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, all those in favor? All right, motion passes 900.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next items on the agenda are 5 schematic designs for various schools, and I would like to bundle them and have a motion to move them, to bundle and move them from information to action, 5.03 to 5.07. All those in favor? All right, we now have an action item. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the schematic designs as listed on the agenda 5.03 through 5.07 be approved.
All right, now we're ready for you guys. No presentation. Do we have any questions? Mrs. Hummer.
Y'all know what I'm going to talk about. So looking at the schematics for Shadyside and Brockbridge, which are scheduled to get walls, they are scheduled to add ADA bathrooms to each of the pod areas. Will those bathrooms be limited to disabled children, or will they be open for any student?
Alex Checkno, Chief Operating Officer. That is a building management decision. So the administrators at each and every building tailor all of their assets, including the restrooms, to the population they serve. So we, as central office, do not dictate how they use a specific bathroom any differently than we would ever dictate how they would use a third grade classroom.
And so that would be also be a building decision, for instance, if they wanted to make it a unisex bathroom that anybody could go in and out for that ADA bathroom, or it wouldn't be designated necessarily a boys' bathroom or girls' bathroom.
Again, I mean, each and every one of our schools is quite different, and therefore the administrator of those buildings need the flexibility to make those decisions, and those decisions can change over the course of a 5-year period, et cetera. So from a central office perspective, again, we try not to essentially interfere with that local management. So the building administrator, their faculty council, et cetera, they're charged with, conversing and arriving at a plan that's the best for their school, their community, their instructional programs, et cetera.
Okay. So the existing bathrooms that are there now are also, from the schematics, they're going to be reconfigured a little bit for the doorways, for the halls that come through?
Because the building previously didn't have walls. Essentially, it just had a little pass-through area. So they're going to be integrated into the overall design. So some modest modifications of the wall that separates those bathrooms away from the rest of the building would have to occur to accommodate both the door and that ADA bathroom, but we're not making renovations inside of the existing bathroom spaces.
Right, it will just do the doors. When they reconfigure where the doors are, will that tear up the tile in the buildings, in the bathrooms, or is it just going to be a wall situation? Do you know at this point?
This is just schematic, so this is really a concept drawing that will be determined as we get into it a little bit further. The ideal, in order to keep costs down, we want to do as the least amount of disruption to the existing infrastructure as possible, both from a cost perspective, and we need to maintain operations, mission continuity for the building, so we want to do that as cost effectively and time effectively as possible.
So, looking at the schematics, so Brockbridge currently has 6 portables in the the perspective for the renovations. The portables are not shown with the school. Does that mean they will be removed, or is it just they just weren't included in that drawing?
I do not have any intentions for those portables to remain at that building. I mean, mathematically, the building will have a fairly robust state-rated capacity. So ideally, at all of our schools, we want all of the children inside of the four walls to the building. So unless demography requires that they retain or program requires that they remain there, we would like to, for the overall good, to, and it's not just at Rockbridge, but all of our schools, shrink the size of the fleet of portables. But again, we'll see where we are 2 years hence and see where the school's population, the programs, et cetera, are.
Because one of the reasons I asked that is, unless I was reading it incorrectly, with Brockbridge, there still wasn't listed for one of the rooms like a music room or something like that, which currently are housed in portables. But with even with the new configuration, there wasn't a music room listed, so I thought they would need to keep the portables to for music and.
Again, that's a building administration issue, and as you know, schools even make decisions to move the music rooms from year to year or move art rooms, et cetera. So we're trying to give them the flexibility. Ultimately, again, a building administrator, his faculty council, et cetera, his administrative team decide, given the amount of students, the programs, the uniqueness of our building, how do we best utilize the cards we've been handed.
To have that. And I've asked you this before. I still don't understand it. Shadyside and Brockbridge, exact same square footage, exact same building. Shadyside's getting an addition that's going to add close to 7,000 square feet. But Brockbridge will still have a higher capacity rating than Shadyside does, even though Shadyside will have 7,000 more square feet. And I know that's a state formula, and so we can't really do it, but I just got to tell you that one still blows my mind of how they come up with that rating. If you have a school so significantly larger that is going to have a lower rated capacity.
Right. And you answered your own question. We prescriptively take that state algorithm that's applied uniformly across all 24 jurisdictions, and with sort of rote precision we do the math, and the answer is what the answer is. Now, of course, that's a state-rated capacity, right? That doesn't govern how many individuals you put into the building, but it's a marker for state rating purposes.
Right. It says, like I said, I know it's a state thing, but it says to me that it doesn't really have a whole lot of meaning if we've got identical schools that have different ones. I can't understand that one. But all right.
Let me just give you one tangible example. It's the one we typically use. So for the same classroom, if it's in an elementary school environment, for example, if it's used for a fourth grade class, it can be rated for 23 students. But if the building administrator puts a special ed, a self-contained special ed class, that room's now only rated for 10 children. Nothing changed. Nothing changed other than it's now a self-contained special ed versus a third or fourth grade class. All of a sudden, the building's lost 18 SRCs because that's the way that the administration decided to use that building. So there's a lot of
all of that. So that makes it hard to tell if a school is over capacity or not. If it's based on, if it's can be that use rather than, I don't know. That's a different debate. I just and I know that's a state formula. I have to argue that with the state, I guess, beforehand. So thank you.
Are there any public questions or comments on these items? All those in favor? Motion passes 9-0-0. The next item is 5.08, the superintendent's recommended FY 2018 capital budget 6-year plan and state capital improvement plan. Dr. Arlato, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the Board of Education adopt the fiscal year 2018 capital budget, 6-year plan, and state capital improvement plan.
So moved. Second.
Okay, so we've had our presentations and our workshops and our public hearing. Is there any board questions or comments on the capital budget? Mrs. Birch?
Based on the the questions and the discussion from the folks from the Old Mill area. I would just like a little clarification, and I think I know the answer, but I want to make sure that they know the answer as to why the Old Mill schools were moved to 2019 instead of 2018. I believe it's because of how we were funded in fiscal 2017, and since we keep things in order and we don't move things ahead of other things on our end, regardless of what the county does, we tend to keep things in the order that we had them in, that we had to continue funding the things in the order that we had them in. And so because of that, if we had funded them, it would have been a ridiculously huge amount of money, probably more than would have been acceptable to ask for in any one year. Am I close?
Yes, ma'am. Again, for the record, Alice Shaknovich, Chief Operating Officer, that's essentially exactly correct. So when we put forward the FY17 budget, all the schools that we referenced, the Quarterfields, the Rippling Woods, the Old Mill High School, both Old Mill Middles, they were completely not funded. They were zeroed out completely within the 6-year plan, with the exception of Old Mill High School. What would be the new Old Mill High School? It had planning money in FY21, but all the other schools were completely zeroed out as a result of the final deliberations at a county council. And then the schools above it, and I'll just rattle off 3, but of schools like Edgewater and Tyler and Richard Henry Lee that we were asking for full funding were partially funded. So there was a lot of issues that essentially created a backlog of projects that were ahead of the ones that I referenced, and they were not fully funded, and therefore essentially those liabilities then cause a shift of things across the board. It's not uncommon, unfortunately, that an item not funded in 1 year, creates a little bit of a domino effect.
Right.
But I will just close with the superintendent's recommendation. In spite of those projects being completely zeroed out in the adopted FY17 budget, the recommendation that you have before the superintendent is to reintroduce all of those projects, albeit a year late, but they all come back instead of essentially completely not even existing on the page, which is where we were as of June 15th.
Right. So now, correct me if I'm wrong, this was the first budget, the FY17 was the first budget after the MGT study, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So I just want to make sure that we all get this. So the MGT study was what we had all agreed we were going to plan our next 10 years on. And so the first budget already we're behind, even though the county executive and the county council and the superintendent and the board all agreed that this was our plan for the next 10 years. Correct? So we're already behind our 10-year plan.
Well, the order remains the same, but
we're behind, and we're not going to be able to get everything done in 10 years, just like we weren't able to get everything done the last 10 years.
we were not fully funded by the state of Maryland
Or
at
the
the
county.
requested level, nor at the county level.
So there will probably be more Brock Bridges in this plan who waited patiently for 10 years and then now are getting walls and no bathrooms instead of getting a renovation at the end of this 10-year plan. Because already in the first year, we're already behind schedule because we weren't funded in the way that we all agreed that we would fund the MGT study. So I'm just pointing that out to everyone.
I'll piggyback on the Brock Bridge question and the PTA president who was here. Where in our priority list would a bathroom renovation fall? Is that a maintenance backlog area or a building systems renovation if we were going to remodel bathrooms?
We really don't have a category of work for bathroom remodeling in terms of a discrete line item. So, for example, we have a line item for ADA upgrades. So that would do exactly that. It would bring a bathroom up to ADA compliance, but it doesn't do anything for the aesthetics of the bathroom.
Right.
We would not be changing out the tile, and if the sink was at the proper height, we're not going to replace the sink that's already at the proper height. So we really don't have a discrete element that speaks directly towards bathroom renovations on a whole scale or comprehensive basis.
So we would pull money out of what pot on here?
We really wouldn't. We really wouldn't. Again, when the building gets painted, the bathroom gets painted. If something breaks, if one of the 4 sinks gets torn off the wall or falls off the wall, by whatever happenstance, we would certainly
It's just
replace that. Or if one of the partitions rusted out, we would replace it as a regular maintenance supply item. But under a maintenance program, maintenance is maintaining what's already existing, we wouldn't go in and renovate all 6 or 8 bathrooms in a building as a renovation project. Again, we don't really have a program called restroom, bathroom improvements or renovations or something like that. So we're maintaining our existing stock. The only time they really get comprehensively redone is when the entire building gets redone, like we're hoping to do with Edgewater, or like we're planning on doing at George Cromwell or Arnold, et cetera.
So the Brockbridge, we've had some emails from parents this week, and they're taking pictures of a bathroom that looks like the tile's missing, or, the lady passed it out. So, this missing tile in a bathroom isn't considered maintenance?
That would be a maintenance item.
Okay.
I have a follow-up question to that. Did I understand the comment right earlier that students can't wash both hands in the sink at the same time? Is that what was said? I mean, that's I mean, tile is one thing. Obviously, if maintenance can capture fixing tile, we should be doing that. But if students can't wash both their hands, that's not a properly operating sink. So do we know? I mean, what's the petition process to get that covered under maintenance? Has that been addressed?
The school administration puts in a work order for any inoperative, working with their chief custodian, puts in a work order, and staff from the facilities division goes out and assesses that and addresses it.
Do we know whether that's happened with regard to these sinks where students can't wash both of their hands?
I'm not sitting here this evening, I know.
But if that happens, if the school administrator does make that type of request to say, hey, my students can't wash both their hands at the same time, that's something that can be addressed under the current maintenance budget?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Great. All those in favor of the superintendent's recommendation? Motion passes 900. The next item on the agenda is 5.09, school start and dismissal times. Dr. Olato, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of option 1 with implementation of the stated start, school, and dismissal time shift to take effect in the 2017-2018 school year.
Do I have a motion? Okay, are there any board questions or comments on this item? Mr. Grannon?
I have a question, and I know this is obviously a subject that has gotten a lot of attention from a lot of different constituents, and it's something that needs to be addressed. But I just wonder, under option 1, if I'm understanding this correctly, the elementary school start times would get pushed back 15 minutes, but there would be 2 kind of outlier schools that would finish after 4 o'clock. Is that an absolute necessity, or is that something that could potentially be addressed by making those 2 particular schools have the earlier of the 2 potential elementary school start times, so that we could implement this but still have those 2 schools finish by 4?
So the short answer is no, without additional funds and changing the routing on the front end in your suggestion, or additional funds to have additional equipment on the back end in order to bring those schools closer to or beyond or within 4 o'clock. So under this current configuration and the routing that we've looked at for these schools, because we've looked at, is there a way to bring that? That was one of the recommendations, one of the requests of the board last spring was for us to take a look at the routes for each of these schools and where can we make some changes, and based on transportation's work, this was the best we were able to do with the confines of this amount of money.
I just want to make sure, am I framing it the right way, that elementary schools have basically 1 of 2 start times and some are early and some are late? Is that not right?
No.
That's not right.
There's a variety of start times at the elementary schools.
Okay. And there's no way that these 2 Do you know whether these two are an earlier start or a later start? Could they be?
As part of your board packet, if you flip back to the two schools that are identified under option 1, Hebron Harmon and Mead Heights, show you their current start time and then what the proposed start time would be.
Okay, so then I guess my question is, this shifts all schools by 15 minutes, but maybe it's the same question I'm re-asking just because I'm kind of struggling with the logistics of this, but there's nothing that can be done for I just thinking about, 4:10 as we get later in the year, that's, they're starting to get kind of dark.
Indeed.
And there's nothing that can be done about this within option 1? Is that something that can be?
Within the confines of the budget that we've got, correct.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Did you have a question? Okay. I don't have any other questions, so if you want to ask.
Oh, you just have one.
Well, Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you, Madam President. I've got a statement I'll make probably as public testimony closes, but I do have a couple of questions that I would like to ask, and Dr. Arlotto, if it's okay, I think Mr. Sheknovich would probably be the person that we would direct these questions to, if it's okay with him. Thank you. I want to ask just a couple of questions that are a little bit broader in nature, and I know we'll probably have some feedback on this as well from the public who's here tonight to testify in some of these areas. But one question I want to ask, we've heard a lot, the 7 or so months that I've been here, there's been a lot of discussion around this bus routing software and the efficiencies we hope to gain from that. I just want to be very clear on the rationale behind that software, why it was obtained, why you and your team made the decision to pursue that software, and the progress we've made on it to date.
Sure. So heretofore, we have been routing buses manually. We've got subject matter experts that use their institutional knowledge and know their areas in the county and the traffic patterns and the school geometries of how to get in and out. So we've been routing those on a manual basis for many, many, many years. Automated routing software has increasingly become better. It started out sort of a little bit unreliable, but over time the technology has clearly advanced to a place that it's much more prevalently used. It can be trusted a lot better. Obviously, it's wholly reliant upon the data that you put in there. So the routing, the maps, underlying maps, the student data, so you have to have a robust data set, but the technology has really advanced. Here in Anne Arundel County, we're inarguably a fiscally conservative county, so we're essentially charged with running the school system as effectively and as efficiently as we can, transportation being one and the same. So we're not really often in a position where we can readily access additional funds to take on initiatives or expansion. So we're always looking at our processes internally to see if we can continue to identify efficiencies, realign resources internally, et cetera. So a system such as the routing software will certainly aid in that as well, in terms of finding more efficient routes, possibly eliminating bus stops where the routing system identifies a bus stop doesn't need to be. For example, if we have a bus stop within 0.7 or 0.8 miles of an elementary school youngster, the policy says an elementary school student can walk a mile. The automated routing system will eliminate that bus stop because it's only 0.7 miles to the end of that street instead of, over 1 mile. So by eliminating a lot of bus stops, by rerouting buses, you can gain some operational efficiencies out of that, and it's critical that we do that. One of the reasons that it's critical that we do that is we're a growing school system. On average, we've been gaining 7, 8 to upwards of 1,100 new students a year, as well as continuing to increase, for example, our programs of choice. All of those put additional strains on our transportation resources. About 59,000 of our 81,000 youngsters are eligible for transportation services. So ideally, the software system, again, will identify opportunities where we can continue to become more efficient, maybe find cost-saving opportunities. Those funds that we may be able to yield out of it can be essentially reinvested in supporting, again, new programs, new initiatives, or our expanding student base that requires transportation.
As we start to, Mr. Grannon made some comments, certainly for some needs here that I think, we consider some of the adjustments potentially to these options, perhaps not even tonight, but beyond tonight. It seems like budget's going to be the concern and remain concerning. But I want to talk a little bit about some unknowns and perhaps I know you have dialogue, Dr. Arlotto has dialogue with other area superintendents and your equivalent in some of these school systems. And we've heard a lot about Montgomery County, Fairfax, Virginia, and many others who are, in my opinion, taking a step in the right direction relative to starting school later. Are you aware of any unknowns that those schools have raised, when they've implemented this and then something happens, in essence, it's, we're peeling the onion a little bit and, there's something that wasn't budgeted and, it sort of blew up in the face of the school system in a subsequent year, thereby constraining or handcuffing the school system because they had to adapt their budget for the unintended consequences that they may not have necessarily known at the time, but certainly we can now learn from what they've done.
I think the biggest unknown is a combination of community opposition. So again, one of the biggest potential savings is the elimination of bus stops, for example, or aggregating more bus stops into sort of collector type systems. So when you eliminate a bus stop that's been in a community since 1977 or however long, there might be some opposition to that. So that's certainly one caveat that you need to be aware of. I think the biggest concern is really with the traffic patterns. Parts of our county really are challenged with traffic and quite frankly, I'm speaking more of the Route 50 as well as sort of the BW Parkway, the north, the western parts of the county. A good example of that is our Fort Meade NSA complex. I mean, we know pretty much through years of observation, we know when the big rushes are to get in and off of the post because while they have traffic going all day, there's a couple windows that there's just this big, tide surge that comes in, tide surge that comes out. And we try to avoid those by shifting start times. You may be taking a school on a route that previously wasn't commingled with a big surge and push it into that. So you either have to take that school out of its tier that would require the acquisition of additional buses, or instead of just moving the school 15 minutes, you actually may need to move it, for example, 35 minutes to get it on the other side of that surge. Those are things that a software package will never be able to tell you. I mean, software package knows, how many cars a road is or buses a road is designed for. It knows what the posted speed limit is. It knows if there's a traffic control device there or not. It does not know, just like you do. I know Ms. Hummer, Ms. Korbelak, a couple of you live out in Western County, Ms. Burge. You know a large part of your life if you ever travel on the BW Parkway or you travel on 198 or you travel 175. It's almost like a life-controlling piece. And if you're late by 5 minutes, it's the old adage, late by 5 minutes means I'm going to be late there 40 minutes. The software doesn't know that. Our transportation specialists that have lived and breathed and are out there, boots on the ground every day, they actually do know that. So you can never completely just believe that the software package, hands-free, is going to be able to flip a switch and give you an answer. That's going to have to be reality checked. And so things like traffic flows, et cetera. Specific times of day, specific directions are going to have to be manually massaged, even after you get the results from that. Those are a lot of the feedback that we heard, from example, through dialogue with our counterparts in Montgomery County, because we went and visited Montgomery, we visited Howard, we visited Prince George's, et cetera, when we were in the learning and acquisition phase. And that's some of the things they counseled us on, is that, to begin with, the solution set usually is too constraining and it's not publicly acceptable. Again, mass elimination of bus stops, et cetera. So you have to do that little bit of sensitivity analysis with your community. You also have to then take the results, the robotic results of the software algorithms, and then you have to sanity check it to ensure that it is not sending you into a condition, for example, around Fort Meade, it's going to be all glommed up at a specific time. And the only way to fix those really is to either move that school out of its time that costs additional routes and buses, or you make a more dramatic shift to get it on the other side of a hump, a traffic flow hump.
And then I guess as follow-up to that, and for better clarity, not just for me but for the public, we won't know all of the answers until the routing software does its thing, but is it conceivable, or even in some cases possible, that if we move forward tonight with a 13/15-minute shift, that some bus stops would still have close to the same time that they have today?
That is likely not, that's likely not feasible. More likely than not, while the vast majority of schools will have this universal shift of whatever minutes on the front end, on the back side, there are some schools, again, where a universal shift is going to push that specific school into an untenable condition, and then something unique and possibly more drastic is going to have to happen with one school. The ideal situation would be to find a way out of it without having any additional public expenditures for that.
One final question, if I may, that is just a little bit more specific to our budget and transportation costs in general. And I'm sure some of this will come up later as well, but our expense line for transportation, for gas in particular, has remained relatively flat, I want to say, over the last couple of years. But we've experienced, I think, at least over the last couple of years, decreased fuel costs. But yet we're still allocating, what seems to be a relatively flat line within the budget. We're not realizing, at least in the budget that we're approving here, those cost savings. And I know there's rationale or reasoning behind that, and I wanted to get your thoughts publicly on why that's the case.
Sure, because we're absorbing additional student transports and additional programs. So when we've been going, we do not have a commensurate with every school year opening. We've not had a request in a superintendent's budget like you have teachers for classroom enrollment. There's sort of this correlation that goes with growing enrollment or opening programs. You also have a corresponding budget line item that accounts for that. We've been essentially absorbing those additional student trips, be they generated by program or generated by enrollment rises, within the budgets that we've been allocated, largely by taking things like the fuel savings and redeploying them towards paying for those routes. We also have a lot of increase. There's a driver shortage as well, and as contractors are rebidding these routes, they have to, just like we do, you heard earlier, provide compensation levels that allow them to both attract and retain drivers. So that helps eat up part of the savings. And finally, the buses are capitalized. The vendors that are providing these services are capitalizing these buses over a 12-year period due to environmental regulations, the catalytic converters, the safety enhancements to the buses, et cetera. The buses are themselves the actual capital expenditure that they then spread over a 12-year timeline that we pay for, right, through our contracting. the cost of those buses is going up. So yes, are there savings associated with the commodity decreases? Certainly there are, but they're being, again, redeployed to cover these other rising costs internally without us having to go and create additional expenditure line items that would raise the district's request and therefore raise the amount over MOE that we would be requesting of our funding authority.
Thank you for this, and Madam President, if it's okay, I stop my questions now, but I do have a couple of comments I'll make a little bit later.
Mrs. Sasso.
Alex Donley. Okay. How far advanced are we in the software? By this I mean, do you think the software and the reality part, when will it be terminated or completed so that the board will know exactly, you know, that this plan that we're voting on is exactly what is going to happen, and that nothing will shift drastically or we can move something back, like the elementary schools?
The software that we have that is being implemented as we speak is not going to enable the fine-tuning of this plan. So, I mean, again, for the vast majority, it's a simple mathematical shift of 13 minutes or 15 minutes. There's going to be a couple select cases in there that we know that shift of 13 or 15 minutes, on the 13 minutes is not going to cause an issue at the high school, it's at the elementary and middle. We know that there's probably going to be a couple hot spots, let's just call those, that may have to be massaged. We want to keep those to an absolute minimum. I mean, the board's directing a universal shift, but each and every year, if you go over, if you take a look at the school start times, and I'll just use Meade, the starting time of many of those schools is not the same as it was 5 years ago. So as traffic and congestion, because of the employment, the number of people that are coming on the post, the growth around the area, each and every year we make incremental adjustments to those start and end times anyway. So the software won't be implemented this year or affect this plan, but we're continuing to work that system so that we can begin to run parallel models. It would not be for the August 17 year, which is the plan before you. We would hope that the information from that would enable us to drive those benefits, those economies I spoke about for the August 18 school year.
Okay, but do you have an idea when the software will become reality? Are you talking not until the 18?
No, well, the software is reality now. I mean, the software is up and running. The vendors delivered it. We have last year's maps and last year's
Yeah,
student
but
data.
reality, you know, the reality part of the software. Yes, we can stop here. Yes, we can stop here. I mean, it is finished. We know that that's what we're going to do with the software and
No,
the
ma'am.
reality bus stops.
No, again, we're overwriting.
Yeah.
So we have this new student cohort. Enrollment pretty much stabilizes by around September 30th. So we will overwrite the student database with the new student cohort that we have here. We're continuing to put in the stops, the times, the equipment, et cetera. And then what we're going to do is we're going to incrementally begin modeling individual feeder districts. We'll take one feeder district and we'll model that, and we'll compare the output of that versus the reality and sort of.
That's what I want to know, Alex. You know, what time are we looking at? April of next year, May of next year, that you really will have all of the studies that you need to do completed?
Well, if I could jump in, I think it's important to state, and certainly, Alex, you can finish your thought. The software was not purchased to change start times. Right? That was not the purpose. The purpose of purchasing the software was to make us a more efficient and effective school system in terms of transportation. Certainly one of the recommendations that came out of the Start Times Task Force was for us to automate our processes in transportation, and that this board took that to heart, and we moved forward with the budget in order to purchase the software. So right now the software is being used to see how it will route what we currently do. We'll then use it to explore what it can do into the future. When you use the term reality, we don't have a date set where we flip the switch and say we are now we're now creating all our routes using this software, because we want to make sure it's working right. We're not going to impose a start date for the use of the software until we know it's working 100%. So what Mr. Sheknovich is talking about is that we will start small. So after we know it's up and running, it can do this, they'll start and route the Meade cluster or the Broadneck cluster or the Southern cluster, and they'll do it in small batches before they can be up and running the entire system. And that, Alex, you might want to add to that.
No, and that's actually, and that's exactly the case, is we want to then run parallel, so we're going to do it, you know, discreetly, a segment at a time, sanity check that, move on to the next segment, and sanity check that until we have all 12 feeder districts completely built out for the feeder districts, and then we have to overlay the special ed, we have to overlay the magnet runs, et cetera, those other midday runs we have, like the CAT Center. So there's multiple layers to it. Again, we're hoping to have everything up and running, again, not for the upcoming school year, but use the upcoming school year as a year to basically do those side-by-side comparisons, gain that level of refinement, gain that level of trust in the outputs of the system, so that for the year after that, we'd be in a position to hopefully have that inform the routing much better than it does today.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question that you answered already, but I just want to reiterate so that everybody understood. Our school start times, especially at the elementary level, are never guaranteed because you're making these tweaks every year that neither this board nor the public really gets to weigh in on. It's based on transportation and traffic and other factors that parents open up the bus schedule or get it online and realize, oh, this year my school's starting 10 minutes later than it did last year.
A very common one, SHA notifies us that they're going to do a bridge project adjacent or on a primary feeder road to this, and the bridge project's going to take the next 18 months.
Right.
That's going to absolutely create a change in routes and possibly start times for that school. And we do that until that bridge project's completed, and then we'll move it back. So each and every year, a handful of our schools, it's usually like, you know, maybe half a dozen or less of our 120-something schools have to get adjusted, and we try to make them as small as possible. They're usually like 5-minute increments or something like that. But they're, because of real circumstances, either traffic or construction or something that's causing an adjustment, we try to make it a short-term adjustment. If it's something that is going to abate in 1 or 2 years, we'll bring the school back. But sometimes it's a longer-term issue that would become the new start time. So we've had schools around the Meade area that have now changed 3 times. Their start time has changed 3 times in the last, 6 or 7 years as the fort continues to grow, as all the construction activity continues to occur around there. And we try to stay on top of it. We're in communication with the state and the county transportation officials. We're in communications with the officials at the fort. And we make those incremental adjustments. We put out a proposed start time to schools, ask for their feedback, the administrators, et cetera, as well too. And then we finalize those and bring them out to the community.
And based on the feedback we get every fall, it seems like it happens more at the elementary level than it does, certainly not at high school, because they're set at 717. The other question that I had is, I know we're getting ready to redistrict Annapolis, and we also have a proposal on the table to have Monarch come into the Annapolis area if that all works out. When and if Monarch opens in Annapolis, they're a charter school, so they're then required to provide transportation themselves, correct? So our bus contracts wouldn't be used to transport those children to Monarch?
Right. As with everything else, the charter operators are at their liberty to arrive at any contractual agreements that they can for any service, be it transportation or air conditioning maintenance.
Sure.
Certainly, we let them know, because economies of scale, we have the ability to purchase on a larger scale bus contracts. So we avail them of that knowledge. We give them access to our bus contractors that they maybe can get better preferential pricing than them going out on the market, but in no way, shape, or form are they obligated at all to use any of our contractors. They're operating their own business, and they're at liberty to go and contract for as little or much bus servicing as they want.
So if, say, 3 busloads of children are now, from Annapolis, are now going to Monarch, could we then move those 3 buses or recontract those 3 buses worth of dollar savings and use them for Hebron Harmon or over on Meade?
Well, remember, we're paying a per pupil allowance that's 98 cents of the dollar, so the charter school operator is getting funding for busing as well. So they, part of their formula is they get a certain percentage of all of the different line items of our budget. We get to keep about 2% for overhead. So they are receiving money for transportation. So unless that's backfilled by money from the government, there usually is some offsets, more so into teacher ranks than elsewhere. But if 98 cents of that original transportation dollar went over to the contract school, I don't have 100 cents anymore. I only have 2 left.
Okay.
So,
Mrs. Birch.
Yeah, just on your thought, that's the first time I've really heard about something like this. I'm thinking that would be even worse than trying to backfill with teachers, because we're talking, how many elementary schools are eligible to go to Monarch? 9. So if you're pulling kids from 9 different elementary schools, the number of kids per bus route would probably be so minimal that there's no way, I mean, I can't imagine that you'd be, even if they have 3 busloads of kids going to Monarch, I can't imagine that we have 3 fewer busloads of kids going to 9 schools, if that makes sense, because it's, I mean, kind of like just how people always tell us, well, you don't need the $10,000 a kid anymore now that you have them at a charter school. It just doesn't work that way.
All right, I think we're ready for public comment. And I have one card, Lisa Van Buskirk.
Good evening, Board of Education and Dr. Arlato. Lisa Van Buskirk with Start School Later, Anne Arundel County. Thank you for your multiple discussions over the past few years. Thank you for your multiple votes in 2015 and 2016 to include funding for in the budget to shift school hours. Thank you for considering all aspects of the justification and implications of adjusting school hours to ones developmentally appropriate and safe. If this were easy, it would have been done 20 years ago, 10 years ago, or last year. But the benefits are real and undeniable. For those in the audience or at home, I'd like to remind the public of some history regarding start times in this county. 20 years ago, in 1996, the Board of Education added 8 minutes to the school day, moving high school start times from 7:25 to 7:17, where they've remained for the past 2 decades. The purpose of those 8 minutes was to meet state requirements for minimum school hours for testing and to make up time for winter closures. In an interview with the Washington Post, a copy of which has been provided to you, then board member Maureen York wished that high schools could have started later because it was well known then that teens do better with later school hours. In 1996, it was a money and transportation issue stopping that. In 2006, the scientific justification is even clearer, but money and buses remains the stumbling block. In 2006, when the board last seriously considered start time proposals, a 13-minute shift was part of those options. At that time, it was a no-cost option. It failed with a 4-4 vote. The reason for the votes against? Largely the negative impacts to the already late starting schools. 13 minutes didn't go far enough for the high schools, and an unwillingness to spend money to address that late releases. In the winter of 2013-2014, AACPS conducted a survey on behalf of this board, gauging community reaction to a 13-minute slide. Overall, it was 51 against, 49 in favor, which, given the limited number of participants, I'll call that statistically even. But if you actually break it down by school level, elementary was against at 58%, but both middle at 54% and high school at 62% were in favor of that small slide. If you were to review the 7,000 comments, they generally fall into 3 categories. Keep it status quo, some schools get out too late as is, and 13 minutes isn't enough. Last winter's single proposal and then take it or leave it survey revealed that the public didn't like the plan presented. They weren't against healthy and safe hours per se, but they didn't like what they perceived as arbitrary time changes that were neither fully nor adequately justified. So today we're discussing 13 or 18 minutes. And just because the concerns are the same from year to year, money, late releases, and limited gains for high school, doesn't mean that we need to keep the same status quo of inaction. So after you vote for the maximum slide together possible with all of the transportation money you have available to you, I want you to start thinking about 2018, 2019. And I'd like to think of it in the context of one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. If we don't take the small step tonight, then we do not make the giant leap for mankind and teen health and safety. You stand on the ladder poised for the small step. Will you take it?
Good evening. I'm Teresa Sutherland. I was unable to attend the last meeting, but I watched it on live stream. And Ms. Sasso, I heard your impassioned comments about advocating for funding to shift start times. I can assure you that the parents involved in the local chapter of Start School Later have done just that. We have advocated, we continue to advocate for school funding to you, to the county executive, to the county council, and to the state delegation. I'd like to focus my testimony tonight on the budget, and I have several graphs to present to you that I believe were handed out. And this is good coming on following your previous testimony from Mr. Shaknovich. So the first chart shows the change in diesel fuel prices over the last 5 years. So you can see that fuel prices increased significantly in 2010, stayed high through 2014, and have come down dramatically since. Today, the price of diesel is $1.40 per gallon, less than it was 5 years ago. The second graph shows my calculation of fuel savings that AACPS should be realizing. At the bottom, you'll see the mileage that AACPS drives, and this comes from the MSDE fact book that gets published. And while Mr. Shaknovich said the mileage is going up because of additional students and program changes, in fact, the mileage has been decreasing from a high of 10.3 million in 2013 to 9.978 in 2015, and I estimate, based on 10 million miles in 2016, that you'll spend about $3.2 million on fuel this year, in 16, compared to $5.4 million 3 years ago. That's a $2.2 million decrease. That's 40%. You would have to drive 6 million more miles a year to use up that much savings from fuel prices. The third graph shows the transportation budget, which is driven largely by the cost of private contractors. You can see it increased significantly in 13, consistent with the increase in fuel prices, but when fuel prices declined, the budget didn't. So the result is the fourth graph. It shows budget to actual in the transportation category. Actual expenditures were $1.7 million to $3.6 million less than the original budget in FY 13, 14, and 15, and in 10 days we'll find out exactly how much less FY 16 expenditures are compared to the original budget. Based on this data, I believe you have at least $1.5 million of fuel savings, in addition to $450,000 of fuel tax savings as a result of Senate Bill 560. This $2 million has not been acknowledged or recognized in the budget, and it's enough to buy 33 more buses, in addition to the 10 that are funded. Mrs. Nally, Mr. Grannon, these buses could be used to alleviate the late elementary dismissal times, or they could be used to alleviate the traffic surges that Mr. Shaknovich is concerned about. If the proposed 13 to 18-minute shift is intended to be only the first of several as you shift to start times of 8 to 8:30 over several years, I implore you to state that on the record. If it's intended to be the extent of everything you do, please state that on the record. And if you defeat both of these measures and do nothing to shift start times, please state that on the record. Please don't let the perfect get in the way of the good, leaving us with the worse. Thank you.
Good evening. Thanks for listening to this important discussion. My name is Heather McIntosh. I was a member of the AACPS School Start Time Task Force. I'd like to talk to you about an email that I sent to you yesterday. It's a forward-looking plan for school start time improvement. I want to put this in a positive light. The options before you are an opportunity to take action to restore healthy school start times for students. Consider these options as a beginning. As you know, there is no educational, health, or safety reason to start school at 7:17. If you move from 7:17 now, you will help high school students and you will help open opportunities for the future. When a 13 to 15-minute slide was first proposed in 2016, as Lisa reminded us, there was no cost attached. The cost of 10 years of inaction is now $600,000 and some change for the non-public busing requirement. So here's the opportunity. Moving from 7:17 now provides more scheduling options, for example, a flip the following year. With this as your stated plan, you could have each level of student starting at an optimal time for their development and age by the end of 2019. Given that it's not safe for any student to be at the bus stop in the dark, moving closer to daylight is a critical first step. Step 2 might look something like what Montgomery County Teachers Union has recently proposed. In the email, there was a link to describe 3 options, which basically include 2 flips, a 20-minute and a 10-minute slide for high school and elementary school, respectively. Montgomery County did this 20-minute and 15-minute shift 2 years ago. 20 minutes for their, 20 and 10. 20 minutes for their high schoolers, a slide, just like what we're talking about, and 10 minutes only for their elementary school students. What that did, inadvertently maybe, was put them in a position where they've moved off their earliest start time tier. If we do something similar, it would get us away from the 7:17, which I think we all agree is too early. It's not safe for any child. And what the Teachers Union in Montgomery County is proposing is a way to bring the elementary school students a little earlier in the day. And that's basically a flip between high school and elementary, which brings the elementary students starting, let's see, currently they start high school at 7:45, middle school at 8:15, elementary school in 2 tiers at 9 and 9:15. Montgomery County is a huge school district, twice the size of ours. I'm going to have to speak quickly. What they're proposing is elementary at 7:35, elementary level 2 at 8 o'clock, high school at 8:30, and middle school at 9. I guess what I wanted to just say before I need to wrap up is please vote for the largest shift for high school that we can manage for the 2017-2018 school year, with no elementary school dismissing later than 4:10 or 4:15, whatever you deem, and using the transportation software to optimize this schedule for all. And just as a reminder, this board promised to fix start times 2 years in a row. A 2-step shift can make this happen. Please consider.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Ellis. I am a parent of 2 high school students in Anne Arundel County. Though my degree is in developmental psychology from UMBC, and I can tell you that the involvement of sleep in the learning process has been well established for many, many years, today I'm here to speak frankly as a parent of 2 teens in the PVA at Annapolis High School. You see, I have 4 children, and I've homeschooled my kids for over 7 years now. My teens, being active in the performing arts, have chosen to have the high school experience in the PVA at Annapolis High School. I want to continue to support them in their choice. But as their parent, I struggle as I see the impact these early hours have on my kids and really our entire family. Their health has been affected, they're tired most of the time, and I am certain that not only do these hours make academics harder, I know they would actually learn more if they were alert during school hours and not exhausted when doing their homework. Many years ago, as we've already discussed, a change in start times was made to save the county money on buses. It might have been considered necessary for the budget, but now we know it was done at a detriment to the health and well-being of the adolescent students of our county. I'm certain the board would never have made the decision to cut lunch from the schedule if it would save the schools money because of the obvious impact it would have on kids' health. Kids need adequate sleep too, and the science on that is very clear. As you are aware, all of the experts agree that starting school before 8:30 a.m. does not allow adolescents to get adequate sleep. I know the only options on the table for next year are to move high school start times by either 13 or 18 minutes. While it is encouraging to see the board considering this very important matter, my kids are in high school now, and I want to see them have the healthy hours of sleep they need and deserve during these important years in their development. Please do whatever needs to be done to bring our start times to the healthy hours our kids need. And more districts across the nation are finding a way to do so. Thank you.
Good evening, Janet Norman, Annapolis High parent. I hope that all of you will take the opportunity to look at some of the really great resources we have on our data and resource reports on our county health website because they're very illuminating. And I want to say something about our bus transportation to start off with. The reason why, hopefully, you moved to the software package use was because the Maryland State Department of Education did transportation audits on you in 2007 and 2014, and both times recommended that you should be replacing the manually conducted transportation with an automated transportation system. So that's been quite a long time that's been recommended to you. More data from the Maryland Pupil Transportation Report, the 2013-14 school year. Take a guess at where Anne Arundel County ranks in per pupil spending on transportation in 2013-2014. We're the third or fourth most high income county in the state. And we rank at the lowest 18th out of 24 in per pupil transportation spending, according to the MSDE fact sheet. 18th out of 24. We're not doing our kids a service with how we're allocating our dollars on them. Some really good research lately from the Washington Post highlighted the powerful thing that happens when school starts in the afternoon. And they showed that a school that was studied that flipped, sometimes started in the morning at 7:30 and sometimes started in the afternoon. They flipped their high school and the middle school. It closed 12 to 16% of the differences in grades between boys and girls. So if you look at what's happening in our county, our boys are suffering. They're not doing as well. They're not going on to college at as higher rates. If you look at the county's really great substance use and overdoses in Anne Arundel County, December 2014 report, if you look at their number of adolescents in treatment, it's 75% boys, 75% males. So we are not taking care of the needs of biologically of males who they said are not, that girls perform better when sleep deprived, girls run on a slightly different schedule than boys, girls are more likely to be morning people and more likely to go to bed earlier and get up earlier. So what are we doing for the boys that need you to make them successful as adults? This substance abuse data is very troubling. And I'll tell you, my son, who got 100% in health class, when he was facing a third soccer season crippled by injuries as a possibility, he said in his exhaustion and frustration, maybe I just need to take more powerful painkillers. Is that what any mother wants to hear from your kid who knows all the lessons? You're not going to get him with a PowerPoint. You're going to get him by getting him sleep so that he doesn't make bad decisions, like so many of our kids are being forced into making bad decisions from sleep exhaustion. Thank you.
Good evening, President Korbalak, Dr. Arlotto, and members of the board. My name is Lisa Rodvian. I would like to thank you for continuing to press for healthy school start times for our middle and high school students. For the new board members, if you're not familiar with the research, we have reached a point where every major health organization is recommending schools start no earlier than 8:30 a.m. The research is clear and has been acknowledged through the recommendations of the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, the American Medical Association, the Centers for Disease Control, and the American Academy of Pediatrics, and many others. While the proposal before the board to move start times 18 minutes does not fully reach the 8:30 goal, it still represents an important step towards improving the health and well-being of our teenagers. Retired Superintendent of Edina, Minnesota Public Schools, Kenneth Dragseth, PhD, says, starting school later was the most beneficial decision I made in all the years I was an educator. He is not alone in his assessment of the benefits of healthy start times. Since my time is limited, I will just mention two of many studies. a massive University of Minnesota study that examined 8 high schools in 5 school districts in 3 different states, collected data on 9,000 students, and it revealed amazing improvements in all of these schools. The study found declines in rates of teen depression, decreases in rates of substance abuse, which should be especially noteworthy in our county that is fighting a huge substance abuse crisis, significant reductions in local car crash rates, less tardiness, less absenteeism, and higher scores on national tests. Another key study from the Heritage Foundation found that disadvantaged students benefit twice as much as other students from later start times. And in other words, this means you have a great opportunity to cut the achievement gap down. I have heard your concerns about the costs of this move, but I ask you to look at the costs of our early start times now. While it may be impossible to put a dollar figure on these current costs, think about the financial and human resources we must use when we push more students into depression and substance abuse through early start times. How much are we losing on early car crashes by sleepy teen drivers? How much could be saved on remediation that is needed because of tardiness and absenteeism? How much of our students' competitive advantage do we give away on national tests like SATs, ACTs, and AP exams because AACPS's school schedules are incompatible with teenage biology? I urge you to take a hard look at the research on the subject and vote to support the change in start times for 2017. The County Council provided $600,000 to make this change, and if you look around, you may find that there is actually more money available. If you are turning that money away, I ask that you instead explain why you are choosing to disregard the recommendations of every major medical organization that has spoken on this subject. Let 2017 be the year we begin to make start times healthy for all our students. Thank you.
Thank you all. Dr. Frank?
Thank you all for your comments. I must say that this has been one of the most controversial subjects that I can remember. With a scientific background and hearing much from a number of physicians, it seems difficult for me to go against the science. The idea of having kids start school a little bit later, I find it very difficult to vote against that. It seems like the community is pretty split on this. Half of the community would like one thing and half would like another. So I hope we'll make a decision on this quickly and move forward as quickly as we can. Thank you.
Mrs. Birch.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for coming out too, and I want to reiterate something that I've said many times before. No one is debating the facts on this. No one. We all know what the science says. There's no question about that. Last spring, we had an $8 million proposal, or last winter, we had an $8 million proposal that was discussed by many, and you've closed public comment, haven't you? Okay. We had an $8 million proposal on the table, and this board made a decision to only ask for an additional $1.4 million due to public dissension over what the plan was. And also, this board does have to put a cost on the move, as much as everyone would like us not to put a cost on any kind of shift. We do have to put a cost on the shift because it costs money, and we have to put a price tag on it because it's not going to happen if we don't have the money to pay for it. And so we were afraid as a group that if we asked for too much money for school start times, that our teacher pay raises would be at risk, that additional teachers for our expanded student body would be at risk, and extremely importantly, our health care for our employees would be at risk. As it turns out, our healthcare fund is still at risk, and we didn't get the $1.4 million that we asked for to help with school start times. So as much as the county council thinks that this is a priority, they didn't add back in the 1.4 million that we would have needed to make me comfortable with a shift, because I am not comfortable with making a shift on the backs of our youngest students, because it is not appropriate for elementary school students to get home at 4:45 or 5 o'clock in the evening, which is what would happen under this shift. When my children were in elementary school, they were at a 3:45 school that dismissed at 3:45, and they did not get home until 4:30. They went to bed at 7. It is not okay for an elementary school child to have 2.5 hours. We have a problem. We do. Our problem is bigger than school start times. It's money. That's our problem. Our problem is resources. We don't have money to do everything that everyone wants. And I'm not willing to do this on the cheap on the backs of our elementary school students. Until we can do this right and not harm some students to help other students, I'm going to be voting no. I may have to leave shortly because my children are home alone in bed. My 9th grader already texted me and he's already gone to bed, but I feel uncomfortable that my 6th grader and 9th grader are sleeping. But I think that it is a bigger issue. It is about money. You can't not put a price tag on this. And I do understand the science. You can tell me about the science over and over again. I understand it. I get it. I don't not believe anyone who tells me about the science. But I'm not going to risk elementary school students and their well-being because we're trying to fix another problem. It doesn't fix a problem to start a new one. So until we can figure out how to have adequate resources in our county to fix the problem the right way and pay for our teachers' health care, which at this point, we're not going to have enough money in February. And if you want to know what we do with the extra money in transportation and everything else, it goes to our fund balance, which we use as a revenue source every year. And next year, that's going to be $13.5 million, which is a revenue source. And if we didn't use it there, then we'd have to cut that money from somewhere else in the school system. So it's not like it's free money. That money already has, if there's extra money somewhere, we use it as a revenue source for next year. We need to have $13.5 million in savings in our budget next year. If we don't, we're going to have less money to spend next year. So it is about money. I know nobody wants it to be about money, but it is. So figure out how there can be more money and how we can fix this in a way that will work for everyone and not put our youngest children at risk. And then I think that maybe we can talk. But we've got $600,000, and that's not enough to do what we need to do.
Mrs. Nelly?
Well, it will come as a longtime elementary school educator. I have heard I've had many emails and many calls because I've been around a while and a lot of people know me and call me from the elementary. I said from the beginning of this discussion, I would never vote for any solution that took our elementary schools past 4 o'clock. I just won't. We are not, I agree 100% with the science. I agree that we need to do something about high school start times, but I agree with my colleague, Mrs. Burge, it is about money. But it is not about our elementary schools. Not only, as she said, with the late times for these schools, the other thing you have to look at as an elementary school principal, and I have said this before, and I'll repeat myself, kids that come into school at 9:45, elementary school kids, by the time they get settled, teacher takes roll, they do everything, they don't start school. It's about 20 minutes to 30 minutes, let's just face it, before they have. Every child has art, music, and PE. That lasts an hour. Now, as a school principal, when I did the schedule,
the fifth graders got that first hour, because you don't want your babies, your first and second graders, to wait to go. They're tired at the end of the day, so you want to schedule their specials, if possible, at the end of the day. So you look at, and stand to reason, the hundreds of elementary school students who will now not start, they'll have art, music, and PE the first hour. They've got to have lunch and recess. Some of them will not begin their academics till noon at the earliest, or 12:30. That is not acceptable to me. I have 3 grandchildren in elementary school. That is not, and more coming. Believe me, when we talk about closing schools and everything, I know. I do a lot of helping out. But I am speaking for those students. I understand the high school, and I agree with the science, but we need to find another way. I will not be voting for either of these options.
Mrs. Hummer? We are doing the board discussion at this point. Mrs. Hummer?
I do not disagree with anything that my colleagues have said. I agree with the science. I also agree that this puts a large burden on some of our elementary schools. But as a parent of an elementary school student and as high schoolers, I also see the burden it's putting on my high school students as well. I believe that we have talked about this ad nauseum for quite some time, and we've debated and we've tried to find the best solution. I think we can all agree that we have not found the best solution, and as long as money is tight, we're not going to. We have to work with what we have, and while it is not perfect, I think that we need to start making an incremental change and to move forward. But in saying that, I would like assurance from the school system that we will continue to do everything possible that we can as looking at things and working with the scheduling and things to tighten this and help these elementary schools as much as we can, so that this option that we have before us is truly the worst case scenario for elementary schools, but that we can continue to try to find ways to improve that so that it won't be such a burden for them. But I believe that we've seen from all the feedback from everyone that this county is very divided on this, about 50-50 both ways. No matter which way we go, we're going to have unhappy people. And it's never going to be perfect. I think, though, that we need to go ahead and make a move and move forward and continue looking for ways that have on. So I will be supporting option 1.
Mr. Gilliland?
Thank you. Again, I want to echo, I appreciate the discussion here, and then certainly the continued testimony, and probably, I can't even guess the number of emails we've received over the last couple of weeks, especially the last week. I've been wrestling with this, and in particular, I would say, most of this day. I hate to confess publicly that I didn't do much work today, because I was dealing with a lot of this. I hope that doesn't cause me to lose my job tomorrow. But I believe the science as well. I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying that too. But no, not the science part. But I believe there's been credible evidence shared with us, and I've got to echo really not just what Dr. Frank said, but Mrs. Hummer, that this is a step in the right direction. I was prepared, as of this morning, to vote against both of these options. I share many of the concerns that we've heard tonight. I think it's unfair that the burden is placed on the elementary schools. The impact on high school students who need to get to work after school. I've been in schools where I've talked with students who have shared with me, sometimes even with tears, even from me, when they talk about they being the contributor and helping the providers of their families depending on their incomes. And I've been wrestling with that. The impact that this will have on athletic and extracurricular schedules is a little concerning. You know, the last meeting in particular, Mrs. Shore called out, you know, the impact to Mary Moss. You know, others have talked tonight about Hebron Harmons and Mead Heights. You know, and we're talking about, you know, Harmon's not too far from Arundel Mills, and elementary school students walking, you know, post 4 p.m. when we've got Christmas shopping and everything else happening in the dark fall months. You know, so I've you know, been grappling with that. But then the educator side of me starts to think about, you know, we've got teenagers. It's different when you get up in the morning and you're active. You know, if you've got time to run, I don't, but it shows. But if you've got time to be active in the morning, you can be energized and get to work. And I'm in corporate America, so there's no way I could sit at my desk at 7:17 and be productive. I can't sit in a chair. I can't sit in a chair and, God forbid, do chemistry or physics or French. Sorry. And I've got to weigh that. And I don't think any of these options are perfect. They're not. And my hope, I really want to echo something that Mrs. Hummer said, that I think we need to continue to fix the elementary school dismissal times. And I'm hopeful that some of the efficiencies that we gained from this system, that was really the reason I was having that dialogue. And I really appreciate not just Dr. Arlotto, but Mr. Shaknovich, you know, sharing that detail with me, because I think we are going to be able to gain from these efficiencies. And I really, I'm just one board member, I'm only one vote, but I really hope, Dr. Arlotto, this is a step that we can continue to gain from the efficiencies. I sat on this board during the 1994-95 school year when I was the student member, and the discussion, whoever handed this Washington Post article, you know, it rings a bell for me, because some of the discussion even began the year I was on. My successor was on the board at the time when this passed. And yeah, this is focusing a lot on the transportation costs cutting at that time, and you know, Mrs. Carr-York's comments here I think are well stated. But we were also grappling with the fact that there was the additional need for assessment at that time, and you know, assessment was, you know, MSPAP back then, for my colleagues that remember that, and you know, that was taking the tremendous amount of testing was taking away from teaching time and learning time, and so we wanted additional time allotted to the day. And Dr. Parham, you know, her quote here is great. I want to get across that 2 minutes does make a difference somehow. And yeah, she was absolutely right. But here we are 22, I'm almost 40 now, but here we are 22 years later, or whatever. And assessment's decreasing, and as it should. And I think another part of this continued conversation needs to include discussion around the length of the school day. Can we shave time? I think that's something that we need to consider as well as part of these efficiencies, because testing is decreasing. Can we recoup the time that we added back then? So I am going to vote for option 1 tonight, but I really want to assure the community that I'm going to continue in my role here asking the questions and ensuring that we do our part to be efficient, to gain from efficiencies, and ensure that we're making the elementary school situation right. Thank you, Madam President.
Mrs. Sasso.
I would like to state, before I give my reasons, I will be voting yes. Okay? I think that we must start somewhere, somehow, and somebody is not going to be happy. And we already know that the elementary school is basically not going to be the individuals to be happy. Okay? Nevertheless, sitting here on the board and having received this report from one of our taxpayers on the diesel, and having received to what Alex has reported. I basically feel that without any doubt to come onto this board or onto the Anne Arundel County Public School, I would like to ask for Alex and the administration of AACP for the next board if they could please give a report to either rebuttal this or present these facts, whether they are true, false, or basically there is a reason for them. I really question any report that is given to me that is basically against what is being stated by the people that I work for or work with. So I am going to ahead and vote yes, but I would like to see a rebuttal from this administration. And the next thing is that I know that it's very hard for everybody to basically have an answer that will be satisfactory for everybody, but we have to start somewhere. So my vote will be yes.
Ms. Williams?
Thank you. I would just like to thank the entire county for the opportunity for me to serve in this position. It is a great responsibility, and I take it very seriously. It has been an adventure these past 2.5 months in this position, but I have learned a lot from my colleagues, and I'm ready to take on the job. So it is with a clear conscience tonight that I cast my vote, and I have the support of the student body with me. Thank you.
I just want to add that, I'm coming from a different perspective than Mrs. Nally and Ms. Burge, because I spent the last 11 years having to try and wake up my high school students to get them to school. And many mornings, I wasn't even up to wake them up. I had to have my husband do it. I won't even teach an 8 o'clock class at my college because my students are not alert and they're not on time. The first class that I'm willing to teach for my 18 and 19-year-old students is at 9:30. We have the earliest start time in this state. And our county executive and our county council have encouraged and funded a small shift in start times. And that money is specifically for transportation and nothing else. While the citizens who weighed in on our 13-minute slide option in 2013-14 were split nearly 50-50, I'm confident with the transportation software, the gas tax savings, redistricting, and other considerations that we can work together to bring those 2 outlier elementary schools back to a 4 p.m. end time. And I really believe it's time to stop kicking the can down the road. Mr. Granton.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of eloquent comments made on this, and there's a lot of people in this room have thought about this issue a lot more than I have and a lot longer than I have. So I'm just going to say briefly that I'm going to be voting in favor of option 1, but along the lines of what you were saying, Madam President, I can't believe, I'm sure that the staff has done the best that they possibly could to come up with the least impact to the fewest number of elementary schools, but I can't believe with all of the complexities that the chief operating officer was addressing and the public testimony we heard on some potential budgetary discrepancies in terms of how those numbers are being viewed, that we can't reassess that along the lines of what you're saying. So if it's permissible, I'm going to make my vote in favor of option 1, conditioned on the fact that we get a report from Dr. Alato sometime in the spring on reassessing whether we can get these 2 particular schools back to a 4 p.m. Close time.
Thank you. I don't have any other board comments, but I didn't call for the last, or if there were any additional public comments. If you guys would like to speak, I'm happy to let you speak.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I stand up? Thank you. I'm a lot more relaxed doing this now. I've got a handout. I don't know if it's been passed around. These are, you've heard a lot about national studies. I had a look at what happens in the state of Maryland as far as start times go. I've gone through the Maryland Report Card website. I looked at absentee rates, graduation rates, test scores, compared those against school start times. Anne Arundel County has one of the lower graduation rates in the county as far as high schools, the four-year cohort. There are 3 counties in Maryland that start all their high schools
8 o'clock or later, all three of them have higher graduation rates, 91% or higher. It's a 3 to 6% increase in graduation rates, which means basically 200 or more high school students every year could be graduating in our high schools if they only got a good night's sleep. They're exhausted, and 200 kids a year could be getting diplomas right now, and they're not. And this is the first step in making sure that those kids get what they need, which is a good night's sleep, and I can't thank you enough for that. And it holds true when you look at Charles County high schools, where they have both early and late starting schools. It holds true for Washington County middle schools. And you can see the last two charts are school by school. Every early starting middle school in Washington County has higher chronic absenteeism and lower MSA scores than every late starting middle school in that county. It holds true for every school I've looked at. And you're going to see results in as little as 15 minutes. And when you get, when you get options working, when you look at how many hours the kids are in school and start tweaking the system and getting more time, you're going to see much better results as you shift high school and middle school start times later. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
My name's Claudia O'Keefe. I'm a parent and former student in Anne Arundel County. And my daughter is asleep now. I woke up at 5:30 with her. But I honestly, I didn't see her. My husband drives her to school every day because it saves us a half hour. If it weren't for him driving, she'd be waking up at 5 o'clock every morning, and I can't do that to her. I feel bad enough about 5:30. Thank you.
My name is Robert Silforth, and I'm a veteran teacher here in Anne Arundel County, and I hadn't intended to speak this evening, but I've listened intently to testimony regarding this issue tonight and for a long time. I have to say that I respect everyone's opinion, because everyone that has given their opinion, they certainly do care and they believe in what they've said. But I teach because I care about the students in my community, in my school. I'm on the firing line each and every day. This is my 45th year. I remember earlier in my career, our starting time was in fact 8 o'clock. Students could come into the building at 8, classes started at 8:10, and for them, it was over at 2:35. We had some professional development today at North County High School, which was really very, very good, by the way. And one of the things that was discussed during that professional development was the importance of including students in their education and decisions about their education inside the classroom and outside the classroom. And so I know what high school students in the North County cluster, how they feel about this issue. There is no decision that's going to work for every single school. I can guarantee you that what might work at Annapolis, Broadneck, Severna Park, absolutely may not work at North County or Glen Burnie or Northeast. So having said that, I think it's important that we remember to involve our students, and what the students that I know would say. They would be happy for the shift to 7:30. They would absolutely not be happy for any shift to 8:30. Now, that may not be a popular thing for me to say, but I am telling you what I know and what my students share with me each and every day. So I know that for sure. I don't have the magic answer. I know Mr. Saknovitz, I found it very interesting this evening when he talked about the fact that there is the ability to make adjustments for specific schools that have really late starting times, and I think that is wonderful. I personally would say that it would be a good idea to vote for this evening with 7:30 start time, with a consideration that you do take a look at some other options, such as the 8 o'clock. Thank you.
All right, all those in favor of Dr. Arlotto's recommendation for option 1?
I vote aye, specifically with the request, though, that we get a report back not later than March 2017 about reassessing the closing times for Hebron Harmon and Mead Heights.
And your rebuttal.
And my rebuttal on, yeah, so that there is clarity on the issues of the diesel.
Are we amending the motion?
I move to amend the motion.
Yep,
Okay.
yep, with
So-
both clauses.
Restate your new motion. We're going to vote for option 1.
I'm moving that we amend the recommendation of the superintendent to keep the proposed time shift, but have a report back to the board not later than March 2017, frankly prioritizing and reassessing whether those two specific elementary schools, Hebron Harmon and Mead Heights, can get back to a start time or a close time of not later than 4 p.m.
Okay, so do I have a second to amend the motion? All those in favor? Okay, of the new motion? No? Carolyn, no? Are we- Of amending the motion.
I'd like to ask a question before,
gonna-
I'd like to ask a question
Okay.
before voting. Dr. Alato, is there a concern that you have since you've been brought into the fray with this amended motion?
With the mark.
Do I have a concern?
Yes.
No, I work for you. So, Dr. Frank, and if the board wants us to reevaluate, we're glad to reevaluate and bring something back to the board. What I do want to say, however, though, is the team has looked at this, all right? Rest assured, Mr. Grannon, that we've looked at these schools very, very carefully. We have no desire to bring these schools beyond 4 o'clock. It was very clear from the board a year ago, Ms. Nally and Ms. Burge, that they wanted us to work very hard to get schools under 4 o'clock. And so the team has worked very hard to do that. Unfortunately, we have 2 elementary schools. And has been said, we're not just elementary schools, there are 4 special schools that will be beyond 4 o'clock, and I'm worried about them as well. I share that. But I assure you, this team has worked tirelessly to try and bring those within 4 o'clock. Based on what we know right now, there's not going to be any change. I'm telling you, in March or June, there won't be any change. However, as we'll continue to look at it, you have my guarantee. I've spoken to Mrs. Korbelak in the past 2 weeks on this very subject and gave her my assurance that we would continue to look at it. If we can find a way to bring them in without spending any more of this budget, then we're going to do that. We have no desire to have those schools beyond 4 o'clock. We'd like to have them maintain the times that they're at right now. So we have looked at it. We'll continue. You've got my word that we'll continue to look at it unless the software tells us something. But I don't think by March we're going to have run enough scenarios with the software that it's going to find some kind of savings. Regarding the savings in diesel fuel that's been brought forward, certainly we'll bring to the board, and we're glad to sit down with the board and go over those numbers with you. I don't know what Mrs. Sutherland's numbers are. She didn't share those with me in advance, nor with Mr. Shanknovich that I'm aware of, and so we're certainly glad to bring those to you. But understand that when you save something in one year, it doesn't mean you have it in the next. So you can save money because the fuel is a little cheaper this year, or last year, and the last couple of years, but if you then put money into the transportation, you have to have that money year in and year out from that point forward. And I don't have a guarantee that those fuel prices will remain at that level through the future years. Until I get that money into maintenance of effort, I can't make that guarantee. So I understand that there may be some fuel savings, and I'm sure her numbers, well, I'm not sure her numbers are right, but they may very well be right, and that's great. But I can't guarantee, neither can she, that the fuel prices will remain the same next year and the year after, and we can use that same savings to pay for those extra buses to bring those schools back and change start times.
Say very briefly, I don't think anything either in my comments or in my motion in any way was trying to imply that this issue had not been studied closely. In fact, I think I said the exact opposite and commended you and your staff for coming up with a plan that had the least impact on the fewest elementary schools. I think I used those exact terms. I'm going to stand by my motion to amend. I'm not going to withdraw it. I don't think it's too much of an imposition to ask that this is a very sensitive issue and that we look at it in the spring, 5 months from now, perhaps with some greater learning from the public testimony that we've had tonight about these fuel savings, as well as the reality checking that the chief operating officer was looking at. So, I mean, I hope, I'll say it one more time, I'm commending Dr. Olato and his staff for trying to come up with the least impact on elementary schools as possible. I want to see if we can do an even better job for these two particular schools, and there's no insult to that to anybody. So I stand by my amendment, and I'm comfortable with it.
All right, just to clean up as best I can for Robert's rules, we are going to vote to repeal the initial motion from Dr. Olato, and then
Tyson, you have an opinion.
we need to amend Dr. Olato's recommendation. Tyson.
Madam President, for the record, Tyson Bennett, Board Counsel. There was a main motion on the floor.
Correct, to approve option 1 with implementation of the start and dismissal times to take effect in 2017-18.
And then there was a motion to amend that amendment, amend that main motion. And that was seconded, as I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Then the only thing for the board to do then is to vote on adding the amendment to the main motion. And if the motion passes, the motion to amend passes, then the two together become what's in front of you. If it fails, then you're back to the main motion again.
And just to thank you for that clarification, just to make it perfectly clear, I'm not suggesting that this amendment be, well, if Dr. Olato can't report back to us in March that this problem for these two particular schools has not been alleviated, that anything changes. All I'm saying is I'm adding to the motion a specific direction that such a report take place.
All right,
Was I able to clarify that, Madam President?
We have Mr. Grannon's amendment on the table.
Motion to amend.
The motion to amend, I need a second to amend it.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of amending the motion, right? Okay.
Amending and passing the motion,
No,
correct?
we're amending it.
No, amending it, okay,
This then becomes part of that main motion.
okay.
Okay, so now we're
Vote.
up for discussion on the amended motion, and you have your button on.
Yep.
Mrs. Sasso.
Since I raised the issue of the diesel price, my concern is basically as a taxpayer, as a person sitting here on the board, and as the presentation from taxpayers in the audience, I wanted to make sure that this issue is just completely cleared so that there is never a question whether there is a yes or a no from either side. It is just completely clear to our taxpayers what is happening to their money.
Okay. Is there any public comment on the amendment? All right, all those in favor of approving option 1 with implementation of the stated school start and dismissal time shift to take effect in the 2017-18 school year and a report back to the board in March of 2017 on ways to bring the outlier schools back to 4 o'clock. All those opposed? Okay, motion passes 6-2. 6-2. All right, we have one final item, consent item. This is an information to action item, an award of contract for applicant tracking software. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action? All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Olato, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend the Board of Education award contract number 16-168, applicant tracking software to Teacher Match, LLC, in the total amount of $101,250.
Do I have a motion? there any board discussion? Any public comment? All those in favor? Patty, are you in favor? Motion passes 800. I just have a couple of announcements. The next board policy committee meeting is Wednesday, September 28th at 1 p.m. here in the boardroom. The next Board of Education meeting is Wednesday, October 19th at 10 a.m. here. And the next board budget committee is Wednesday, October 19th, 1 hour after the conclusion of the board meeting. And this adjourns our September 21st meeting.
Could I make a quick announcement before we adjourn?
We just adjourned.
Say it.
Go ahead.
I have some articles from a national newspaper, the Wall Street Journal, about the school start time in Anne Arundel County, if anybody would like a copy of it.